In this video, we're going to explain to you how to install and use valve extenders. Now, this might not seem like a subject which warrants an entire video in itself, but as someone who's personally struggled with using them in the past, I can tell you that it does. It's worth doing it right if you don't want to get incredibly frustrated and end up throwing your wheel as far as you can, which these days, with wheels being so light and aerodynamic, is quite a long way. Firstly, I will explain what they are, even though it's quite self-evident. Valve extenders extend your valves for use in wheels like this. Deep section rims, where a standard valve doesn't go all the way through the valve hole, and so the pump has nothing to grab onto. Okay, so let's start with your standard valve extender. Before we do anything, we want to prepare the valve itself, or the inner tube that you're going to use. You can put the dust cap and lock ring to one side, you're not going to use them. You're going to need a couple of tools, namely 2 sets of pliers with quite thin ends, and we're also going to need some of this silicone tape, which is going to create an airtight seal for us. Now, undo the valve as you normally would do, and then using your pliers, we want to make sure it's really well undone. The aim of this is to make sure that when you're riding along, after you've done the complete installation process, it doesn't rattle shut and tighten up the valve. This particular inner tube doesn't have a removable core, but if you have got one, like this, where as you can see, you can take the entire core out of the valve, you should also take your pliers and make sure that this is really tight in there and no air is going to be leaking. Right, with that done, it's time to take your silicone tape. This is really, really important at this point, because we're going to want to put some right here where the threads are, where our valve extender is going to sit on. And you don't need to be shy of how much you use. 2 or 3 rolls, probably not enough. I tend to go for around about 10 times around. So once you've got your silicone tape wrapped around the threads here, you're ready to put the valve extender on. Now, it shouldn't feel too easy. There should be a little bit of resistance because you've got those extra layers there. But that's the whole idea. We're going to create a really nice tight seal for the valve extender onto the valve itself. Now, I normally just do it up by hand. If you want to really go the extra mile, I want to take your pliers again, but don't go over the top. These are, after all, quite thin threads. One last little tip for you. Quite often, deep section wheels like this with valve extenders can make an annoying rattling sound whilst you're riding along, and that is actually the valve rattling inside the valve hole. So to fix that, you can just take some normal tape, wrap it around the valve at the point where it exits the rim of the wheel. You see the tape there meets the exit of the valve, and that stops the rattling. Right, ready to just put your inner tube and tyre on as usual, and then we can pump up. So there you have it, 100 psi, no leaking at all. Air is not going to leak out of the inner part of the valve. If it does, it means there's something wrong with it, in which case you'll need to replace the inner tube anyway. Okay, on to our next type of valve extenders. These ones with the removable cores. So for this type of valve extender, you're going to need an inner tube which has got a removable core. Now, you can remove it on something like this, either with your pair of pliers, or with certain manufacturers of the valve extenders, like these ones from Continental. You actually get a nice little tool which slips on. You can simply undo it like that. Take that bit out. Now this bit goes inside. Now, as you can see, there's already a slight seal on the end, but we're going to go the whole hog and do the seal thing again ourselves. So go back to your silicone tape. You don't need to wrap the tape around quite so many times on this one because the threads are that bit thinner. And then we're ready to put the core back into the extender, but we're going to go, as I said, the whole hog and put a bit of tape on here too. There we go, fully sealed long valve using an extender. It's ready to go in the wheel. Now, as you can see, it's probably slightly too long for this depth of wheel. That's the kind of length you might need for an 80mm wheel. And then you can just do the valve up like you would do on a standard inner tube. So there you have it. Remember, 3 key things when you're fitting valve extenders. Firstly, an airtight seal using silicone tape is absolutely key. Secondly, if you're using a standard valve extender, make sure that the inner valve is completely undone, is not going to rattle shut. And thirdly, don't take the valve extender off once you've finished. If you'd like to see how to fix an inner tube, click up there. And if you'd like to see top 10 road bike upgrades, click down there. And finally, make sure you subscribe to the Global Cycling Network by clicking on me.